This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, and death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 44 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, and here to ask the questions that you may have while listening to our podcast. We are both here because we believe that the more you know, the better prepared you are to make difficult decisions before a crisis.
So please relax, get yourself something delightful to snack and sip on, and thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about healing our grief. In the first half, we have our recipe of the week that takes us to the sand dunes of Massachusetts. In the second half, I am joined by Dr. Gina Ford, a clinical nurse specialist, and we will be talking about what to say and what not to say to someone who is grieving. In our third half, we welcome back Claire Lucky, known on Instagram as the Grieving Bitch. She joins us to talk about her experience as a millennial widow and some of the things people said to her after her husband's death that made her crazy. Charles!
Yes.
How are ya?
Fine. And how's the heat there in Oklahoma?
It is freaking hot.
Oh, dear.
So at whatever point in your life or timeline you are listening to this, just know we're recording it in July and it's been over 100 degrees forever.
Oh, hell.
And I'm not exaggerating either.
No, you're not.
So what are we eating this week?
This week we be eating, let's go down to the lab and see what's on the slab. And hey, it's slab pie. This week's recipe is for key lime slab pie, which is a light and refreshing treat for the summer. Of course, in Oklahoma, it'll melt. Top it with strawberry whipped cream for the ultimate combination. This easy, big batch slab pie recipe is perfect for serving a crowd and will be the hit of your next funeral lunch.
So did Frankenfurter make this recipe up?
You haven't seen him for a while, but little notes that turn out to be recipes keep being slipped under my door. So it's possible.
It's just a step to the left, Charlie.
Now, but then what happens with your hip? So you take a step to the left.
And then a step to the right. You put your hands on your hip and bring your knees in tight. It's just a pelvic thrust. You nearly drive you insane. Well, anyway.
This is not the right. Okay. And folks, you are very welcome. No need to send us your comments and thank you notes about that. Please don't.
We just pulled that out of our long-term memory.
Yeah.
Long-term.
Long being the operative word here, yes.
Yeah. We spent one whole summer, remember, going out after work. We used to work 3 to 11.
I forgot about that. Yes. For the midnight showing. Yes. And
then we'd go with the whole group from work.
Right.
From the psych mental hospital where we worked.
and feel free to make whatever connections you'd like with that.
People are saying,
why do I listen to this? Yes.
They're saying this is like making so much more sense now.
Yeah, well, there we are. It's like, oh, yes. Now this makes sense. Yes, exactly. So.
Well, anyway. So this is this piece that you have here is this wonderful.
I know, it's just
writing
really
that was done by this woman who I think recently died. So from Rocky Horror Picture Show to some words of wisdom from Carrie Grote.
Carrie Grote.
And her friend posted this. Carrie wrote this, and her friend posted this. Yeah. So, Charlie?
Yes, it was posted on Facebook. All right. My friend Carrie Grote died this morning. While I'm still processing, I wanted to share the words she left to be read upon her passing. Life is short. I hope they bring you perspective, inspiration, and healing like they did for me. Rest in peace, Carrie. I love you. And quote, if you are reading this fucking brain cancer probably got me. But let me be crystal clear while I'm able. I did not lose a battle against cancer. This is ridiculous, a ridiculous, steamy pile of horseshit that society has dumped on cancer patients. Western medicine and Western culture especially is so uncomfortable talking about death that instead it created this battle analogy that basically shames people who die from cancer. Newsflash, none of us gets out alive from this rodeo called life. There is no shame in dying from cancer or any serious illness, and it doesn't need to be a battle. It's a transition that each of us will go through. I was asked by a shaman whom I spoke to after my second brain surgery, are you running towards life or running away from death? Whoa, that got my attention. There's a big difference. I got it wrong more often than not. Don't let fear fuel your choices. Live fearlessly. Run towards life. Don't worry about what people will think. Trust me, it doesn't matter. Focus on you. Be true to yourself. Be your own best friend. People who tell you you're selfish and not your are not your people. If the voice in your head says these unkind things, get a new voice. Honor your mental health and seek out a good therapist with the same vigor you'd search for a romantic partner. Speaking of, be intentional about cultivating friendships that lift you up. As those friendships grow and change, don't overlook them while you search for that great love of your life. No, I'm not suggesting you sleep with your bestie, but you do you. Another unhelpful message that we get from society is that we need a love of our life as a romantic partner. Single and childless when I was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, I looked around my life and came up sputtering and sobbing from the wave of grief washed over me. I thought I'd be doing this alone. No husband, no kids, no great love. How wrong I was. At the first appointment with my neuro-oncologists, one of the nurses diligently hauled in chair after chair for the great loves of my life who came with me that horrible day and many days after that. I sat and listened while the doctor explained the 12-month treatment plan, focusing on my breathing. Then looked around the room, filled with great loves of my life, incredible women friends whom I had met at various stages of my life. Surround yourself with people who contradict that unkind voice, people who see your light and remind you who you are, an amazing soul. Learn how to receive these reflections from your people because they are speaking the truth. Love yourself, no matter how weird and silly it may feel. Every morning, give yourself a hug before your feet hit the floor. Look deeply into your eyes in a mirror. Say to yourself out loud, I trust you. That voice in your head might say, you're a dork. Ignore it. As I prepare to leave this body and embark on this mysterious journey of my soul, I hope these observations from my deathbed are somehow useful. What I know deep in my bones is that learning to love myself has led me to be able to say this. I'm so proud of how I lived. May you, dear reader, feel the same when you head out on your soul journey too. Until then, enjoy the ride. And always eat dessert first, especially if there's pie.
Especially if there's slab pie.
Yes, slab pie.
Isn't that a great writing?
It is a great writing. Yeah.
Well,
and it's
rest
great
in
she saw
peace.
that. Yeah.
Rest in peace, Carrie.
Rest in peace. Please go to our webpage for the recipe for that key lime slab pie, plus additional resources for this program. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and remember to rate and review this podcast. We have a link in our show notes that makes rating our podcast easy, and that would be so helpful to us. As a licensed nonprofit organization, we are dependent on your kindness and always appreciate your tax-deductible donations. Many of you have told us that this podcast is of help to you. With that thought in mind, please go to our webpage to donate so that we can continue to provide quality shows about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement at www.everyonedies.org. That's every, the number one, dies.org.
Thank you for that, Charlie. I'm pleased to share the second half segment with Dr. Gina Ford, who's an advanced practice clinical nurse specialist at the University of New Mexico Hospital. Our topic today is what to say and what not to say to people who are grieving. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second half of Everyone Dies. And today we are joined by Gina Ford, who's a clinical nurse specialist in Arizona, and she is going to be doing the talk about how do you offer condolences? What do you say? What don't you say? So, Gina, you ready?
I am. I really appreciate you letting me come and do this because, as you know, both of us have worked in palliative care, but I think this comes from more of a personal background for me. I've lost both my parents. My father died from suicide, my mother from a car accident. And over the years, I think people have had the best of intentions, but have said some of the most horrific things to me about both my parents. And so over time have kind of jotted down some of these things that have just stuck out to me. Often, by the way, it inadvertently made me feel. And, I've just kind of mulled it over. And I really had wanted to somehow reach out to people on, basically what not to say to people and kind of give them some ideas of what to say to people that are grieving. Because again, I really feel like people have the best of intentions, but most of us, this is not, really our comfort zone. We don't go into this feeling, oh, I'm in my element. I know exactly what to say when somebody just died, let me go in there and comfort them. I think we all get a little uncomfortable. So that's really where I think this is coming from for me, where I just feel like I think we really need to talk about this. Let's open up a dialogue, because some of the things I've heard, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me.
People know they're supposed to say something. So, okay, everyone gets, a gold star. You're supposed to say something. It's the next part where it comes a little shaky for some people because they don't really know what that something is. And I can remember once saying to somebody, I'm so sorry that, for your loss. And the person saying, well, why are you sorry? You didn't have anything to do with it. And I said, I'm sorry that you have to go through these hurt feelings and these sad feelings. And they were almost, this confrontational kind of, why are you sorry? It's like, you got to even be prepared. So, that happens to you and you're kind of not in the business like you and I are. It's like, I can see very much the next time being like, I'm not even going to say anything because who knows how they're going to react.
That's right.
And it could have been the right thing to say, or it could have been the wrong thing to say. And sometimes people don't know the difference.
That's a very good point, because I think, what I'm going to talk about is just a generalization. Generally, let's avoid these things. Generally, let's talk about these things. However, there's always going to be exceptions, and it is tough. These are always going to be there's nothing really that anybody can say that's going to make this situation any better. There's nothing that anybody can say to bring their loved one back. And even if they weren't close, it's still going to be complicated. And so there's always going to be those exceptions. But I just want to empower people to where they feel maybe a little bit more comfortable going into this, if that's possible.
That would be great. I think, education, I don't know how you feel about it, but I always think education can fix an awful lot of problems. So
yeah,
that even if everybody had one sort of good, comforting line, that might work. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of start with some of the things that, people said to me that I would try and avoid. And, again, all of these people that have said these things to me over the years, I know, again, their hearts, I know they came with the best of intentions, but really for me and, like for my sister and the rest of my family, this was not something that was helpful. And after a while, it just kind of became like nails on a chalkboard. It was like really, so, one of the first things, that I was thinking about was really people tried to make sense of it or rationalize the death. And that really was not very helpful. And I felt like that was personally, again, for me, I can't speak for anyone else in my family, but that was one of the touchiest aspects for me. And it was hard for me not to be angry or really question everything, or, really not slip into like an existential crisis for what I was going through, not only with my dad, dying young and then, my mom tragically, but I didn't really need anyone telling me, that all of this happens for a reason or God took my mother for a reason. And I really feel like using these lines on someone who's dealing with death in these situations isn't always helpful. Some of the things people said to me is everything happens for a reason. We shouldn't question this. God will never give you more than you can handle. God wanted her for an angel, and now she will always be with you. She was too good for this earth, and now she will always be watching you. And I kind of felt like that was a little creepy. I mean, I'm of a Christian faith, but I'm like, really? No, I don't want that. I don't, and so it was just, for me, I knew what they were doing, but the more I thought about that, the more I was like, this is not helpful. And if you're dealing with someone who is struggling with faith, I feel like that could almost make them, I don't know, slip into, in a crisis. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, but I feel like that can be kind of a slippery slope there.
Well, I think it makes people angry. It's like, what, God needed another angel? I only had one mother. What are you talking about?
Right.
That's not a good enough reason. Like if you're trying to rationalize the death, those sort of aren't really cutting it, are they?
No, and and I think the idea of her always being young or always being an angel, to me, I was like, yeah, that's not good enough. I want her here in a human form with me and with with her grandchildren, and so that there's nothing that anybody can say that's going to rationalize this or make it feel better or to make heads or tails of it. And so, it was just kind of like I would inwardly cringe when somebody would say that. And it just, I found that was said more often than anything is, she's always going to be an angel watching over you guys now. And I still hear that. And it's just, yeah. And it's just like, I just kind of smile and nod, but inwardly I roll. And it's not that I don't have faith, but it's like, this is not helpful. And again, this is just my personal viewpoint. Another thing I heard a lot is, really I found a lot of people trying to kind of make it about yourself or in quotations, I know exactly how you feel. And I think, again, we've all come across this reaction. And I think someone who responds to this, or someone who's sharing, that you're going through a hard time and they're sharing their own hard time, or that they've even had a harder time, I think that they're trying to kind of show that they're kindred spirits. And again, it comes from a place of wanting to show comfort, but it's really not appropriate unless directly asked. By trying to really one up someone's grief or share their own story, you're really taking away from the support that's needed, and kind of making it about yourself. And it really inadvertently minimizes what they're experiencing. And I think it's really important to remember that every grief experience is different. Even my sister and I, how I felt about my mother is different than how she felt, and we're raised in the same home, and I think no one will ever know exactly how each individual person is feeling or what they're going through. And it's important to remember that every experience is unique. I mean, I heard one person said to me, again, with the best of intentions, I know exactly how you feel. I lost my mom, and I promise you, you will be over this in a month. And then another person that I'd worked with for years said, I know exactly how you feel, as she was hugging me and said, you will never be over this, and I just want you to know you're never going to feel normal again. And that was like the day I came back to work after the funeral, and I was like, I'm just trying really hard to put one foot in front of the other. And I don't need somebody to tell me I'm never going to feel normal again, because I was really just trying to make it out the door this morning, And again, it was best of intentions, but the whole, I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly how you feel. And I'm like, well, do you? So again, best of intentions, but I just feel like it was kind of misguided. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, spoiler alert for that is nobody knows exactly how anybody feels. And even those of us who are feeling don't know exactly how we feel.
Right.
Don't tell me how I feel, because I'm not sure how I feel right now. I've got
exactly
7,000 different emotions running through me, and there's just no way that you know what all of those are. And, even just saying, I have no idea how you're feeling, this must be so hard, says the truth. You don't know how, you don't know how I'm feeling, and it is hard. I mean, that's
and it's such a roller coaster of emotions. There's times like that my sister and I would check in with each other, and, we were never on the same page with our emotions, but we could agree that we were both experiencing the same variety of emotions, but we were all over the place, And so I think it's just, again, it was the best of intentions, but, then they would launch into telling me their story. And then one time the girl that was sharing this with me started crying. And then I ended up consoling her. And I was like, it turned into a whole ordeal. And then it was just, again, best of intentions, but it was just not what was needed at the time.
And the focus really is on the person who's grieving. And it's not to say that you're not grieving too, and that you don't have your loss too, but, sort of time and place for these things. And when you're offering condolences, it's not really the time for your own grief support,
Right. And again, if somebody asks
later.
Again, if somebody asks, I think that's totally appropriate. But if nobody asks, that's not the time to start sharing your story about when you lost your parents, or you lost your mother, or you lost your father. I think that is a different time, because a lot of times I feel like when people are grieving, especially when it had just happened, they're having a very hard time focusing, putting one foot in front of the other. And they really, at least for myself, it was all I could do to just, make it out the door. I really was having a hard time focusing just to console somebody else. It was very challenging for me. And so, again, that was something I thought about. And I thought, that really shouldn't be shared unless, I asked. Again, best of intentions, but I just felt like it was really misguided.
Yeah.
Another thing I saw a lot was really a lot of people giving solutions or unsolicited advice. I feel like anything that starts with, you really should be doing this. is not particularly helpful, and it just kind of comes with implied judgment. And, often I feel like I had done that in the past before, with the best of intentions, but I didn't need anybody giving me any more advice. Really, I knew what I should be doing. I just needed somebody to be with me. I heard a lot of, you really should, get up and get out, go for a walk. You should try and keep yourself busy. One person said you should get on antidepressants before the holidays. That one, I was kind of like, what? That was a workaholic person. I was like, wow, okay. I didn't think we knew each other that well. That was kind of an ominous warning. But,
Wow.
You shouldn't be so upset. This was another one. She will always be with you in spirit. It was kind of like you should be rejoicing. She will be with you. And then the next two were kind of like, it gave me a lot of pause. I had one person who I was not particularly close with at work, but, came up and kind of grabbed me by the shoulders, hugged me and said, I'll be your mother now. So I don't want you to be upset. And that one really kind of gave me a lot of, that one really it did not sit well with me because again, maybe I'm giving too much grace to people. I really felt like that was the best of intentions, but that was not family. It was not even somebody I had a personal number to affiliate with outside of work. And so I felt like, that was really kind of misguided and inappropriate. The same person was like, you're lucky it happened when you were so young. It's so much harder to lose somebody you really know and love, when we were talking about my dad dying when I was younger. And so really just kind of giving solutions or this unsolicited advice and kind of telling me how I should feel, I felt like was just really not appropriate.
I wonder what motivated that. Isn't that odd?
It is. I thought about it and I thought, well, maybe just her personality is kind of a leader, maybe, I don't know. I've really tried to rationalize it a lot and not just write it off as like totally creepy and stalkerish. It's not. But again, it was just, I don't know. Again, I think best of intentions just totally went off the rails, though.
No boundaries there, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And it was funny because the physician I was working with at the time, I had just been telling him, I'm like, if one more person hugs me without asking me, pats me, kisses my forehead, or tells me my mother's always with me in spirit, I'm going to lose my mind. And he was kind of laughing. And then the nurse came in and was like hugging me going, I'll be your mother now. And I looked at him over her shoulder. She was kind of hugging me and rocking me. And his eyes were just, because I don't think he believed me until he heard that. And I was like, I told you. And he was like, I really thought, he goes, I left my body and kind of hovered over us for a minute. I told you that this was happening. And he was like, we're supposed to be better at this because, I was working in oncology at the time. And it's like, yeah, imagine what they're saying to our patients, I mean, it's just awful. It's awful. Yeah. Wow. And I can laugh about it now, but I was going home like with my eye twitching. So,
so that's not on the recommended list, folks. Don't.
No.
Unless somebody says, "Will you be my mother?" Then you can consider if you want to be or not. But
I remember coming home and telling my husband about that, and my son, who was 9 at the time, said, "Mom, are you joking?" And I said, "No." And he was like, "You're kidding me, right?" Like he even picked up on that, like, "You're joking." It's like, no, I'm not. Like he even sensed that this was inappropriate. And then the last category I have is really don't fall into the silver linings, which probably goes into, making sense or rationalizing it. But I had so many of these that I felt like I needed to break it up into 2 categories.
Oh my goodness.
I feel like this is where people really get stuck and people just kind of get into the fix it mode. And it really is, again, important to remember no one can really fix what has happened. Whether or not the person that died, you had a close relationship with them or not, we can't fix that. And so often our job is just to be with the person that's left, to be with them through this, to kind of bear witness. And so I think the fix it trap, mentally it just kind of rears its head in many ways. And offering silver linings to a person who's grieving or saying anything that starts with, in quotations, at least, that kind of gives you a clue that we're kind of falling into that trap. And this is an actual quote. I had somebody, and this person really was a wonderful human being, a great coworker. But this was actually one of the first things that was said to me when I went back to work. And she said, "Silver lining, at least you will never have to buy another Mother's Day card." And I just kind of looked at her, and I was a bit shocked. And I said, because she was serious and she was a bit teary-eyed, and I said, I would rather buy the Mother's Day card. And she goes, "Well, that's how I try and look at it is, you won't ever have to, buy another Mother's Day card. You won't ever forget another Mother's Day." And she goes, "So just try and look at it that way," and kind of patted me and walked off. And I was like, okay, and so it was just, again, she meant well. I know she did. And another one I got, at least it happened quickly and your mom wasn't in pain. Not knowing the situation, it didn't happen quickly and she was in pain, but, again, people just don't know what to say, Mm-hmm. Here's another thing. This is really a good thing. It happened to her while she was young. She'll never get old and die a really long, horrible, prolonged death. And that one I had to think about for a long time because, again, I knew what they meant and I knew what they were trying to say, but it just didn't sit well with me. Because, we see people, in oncology that really suffer a lot. And so I knew where they were going with that, but it was just not the right timing, wasn't appropriate. And it just, to me, I didn't feel like it was a good thing. I didn't feel like it was good that she died when she was young. And she wanted to get old. I wanted her to get old, and so I didn't feel like that was helpful. And then the next comment.
Plus with what you do, you're a palliative care nurse, is that you don't let people suffer. And you sure never let your mama suffer.
Exactly.
So that's kind of like a double-edged, not only would you be very happy for your mom to grow old and you alongside her, but even if she was sick and hurting, you make sure she wasn't hurting because you're good at what you do, right?
Yeah, and it's just, I thought, she wanted to be with her grandchildren, she wanted to see great-grandchildren, and I mean, we used to joke, all of us joke with her. I mean, she was healthy. She was so healthy. She was going to outlive all of us. I mean, she wasn't on any medication. She wasn't sick. And so, it was like it was just, when we think about this, we had no reason to believe that she would be going anytime soon. And so, she had plans. And so it was just, when I thought about that one, I thought about it for a long time, and I struggled with a lot of these because, again, I knew the majority of these people pretty well. And so I feel like they meant well, but again, these weren't very, very helpful, even though they were meant to be. The next two were about my dad, and these were said some time ago. And, again, I shared the nature of how my dad died. He had committed suicide. And, I have found over the years that I don't talk a lot about my dad just simply because if you share, you lose a parent with somebody, you get sympathy, you get, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then they inadvertently, almost always ask, "How did they die?" And as soon as you say suicide, you talk about making something uncomfortable really fast. I've learned people just flip out over that. And so some of the things that I just usually, just say, "Well, he's been gone a long time," because I end up consoling them, telling them it's okay. He's been gone a long time. I'm okay, because they just can't handle it. Some of the things I've heard as well, since he committed suicide, he obviously wouldn't have been a good or stable influence. It's probably good that he's gone. And with I just kind of like, stare at them and, don't really know what to say to that because, again, my nature is I'm not very confrontational, so I'm not going to like bow up or start an argument with somebody that I know means well. And I don't react very well in the moment. So I'm one of those processors, so I usually have to think about things, sometimes write it down and just like chew on it and wear it in my hair for a while before I come up with a really good, response. And so, I just usually just end up thinking about these things for a long time, but that was pretty horrific. And another one is, well, because he had a drinking problem, and it said, if he had a drinking problem, there's no telling what you would have been subjected to growing up, as you got older. So this is probably a blessing in disguise that he did that. So again, it's one of those things that you exactly. That's kind of what I felt like on the inside when they said that. Was like, oh my God. So over the years, I've just generally not talked about my dad a whole lot to people because, people ask, how did he die? And then they get uncomfortable. And, my sister-in-law once shared with me, and I always found this to be true, is that, people always ask how somebody died. And, it really doesn't matter. All that matters is that they're not with you anymore. And I was like, that's really true. And I've not ever heard anybody say that. I'm sure somebody, I said that before, but nobody had said that to me. And I'm like, that is true. And, that's when after her and I had talked about that, I just started sharing, he's been gone for a long time, just to kind of spare myself, a lot of that unsolicited, horrific advice I've gotten over the years. So now that I feel like I've given you a long list of things not to say to where people are like, well, I'm just never going to talk again. I want to give some ideas on how people can help, because I do feel like there's a lot of things that can be said, or things that were very helpful to me during this time for both, when I lost both parents. That I feel like were helpful, during this time. I really feel like it was okay to say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. I felt like it was okay to say that, to say, I don't know what to say, or I'm so sorry that this happened to you. We all have challenges saying the right thing. And sometimes just saying that out loud for ourselves is helpful. And it's okay to say, I know nothing I can say right now is going to make this easier, but I'm here for you, or saying that I love you, if that's appropriate, if you actually know them. But I not if you just
you mean I can't tell you that I love you if I don't really know you?
I never would have thought to have to add that as a caveat, but after some of the things I experienced, I do feel like I need to put that in as a disclaimer.
Can I be your mother and I love you and everything?
Oh, no, there was no asking. It was just a declaration.
I will be your mother, and you will like it.
Yeah, exactly. So, for me, I learned that sometimes, even in like, we've heard that with public speaking, like if you're going to go give a speech somewhere, just even saying, I'm nervous about speaking in public, sometimes helps dispel the nervousness. Well, I think sometimes even saying, I don't know what to say about this, I am so sorry, kind of helps dispel that. And just saying, I'm here for you, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. I think that's okay. Again, I think just being present, you don't always have to have the right words, but just showing up with just a willingness to talk about the person who died is so important. Sometimes instead of trying to make someone feel better, just being there and allowing them to feel the pain is more effective. Letting them know that whatever they're feeling is okay, it makes sense. And because, again, like we talked about, everybody goes through these emotions and grief at different times and different rates. They experience things differently. And all of these expressions of emotions or lack of emotions are okay. And they may be not expressing it outwardly or in ways that we think of, that we express it. So sometimes just holding space and reminding them what they're feeling is okay and that you're there with them. I think that is so important, just having people check in on me, just being present there with me was very, very important, and just allowing me to be me. And, I found that so comforting, and, not even wanting, like, forcing me to talk about it, sometimes just sitting there, next to me, in silence was very, very helpful, because sometimes I was just talked out.
Right.
I felt like that was very helpful. Another thing that I really liked was, I think a common phrase people throw out is just, let me know if I can do anything. I think generally when people are grieving a death, and everything already feels so heavy and overwhelming, it really is a lot to carry. So I think offering concrete, useful ways you can help is really important. Kind of placing another task on a person grieving, like to come up with a list of things they need, could just be another burden to them. So, I had people offer, like, meal trains, taking turns cooking. I had, people I worked with, that I hadn't even, like the hospitalist group I remember that I had worked with, they emailed me a bunch of DoorDash gift certificates, and so that was really nice. I had a bunch of different people from, previous places I worked with email me, like, gift certificates to grocery stores. I remember our neighbors pulling the trash cans up to the curb to us, and little things like that. It just meant so much, and it wasn't anything that I asked for. People would say, is there anything I could do? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And then one of my friends one time picked up my son, from camp several days in a row. It was just little things like that were just so helpful, just to let me know that they were there. And I think that was really helpful, because you're just so overwhelmed. And, I think things like that are letting people know without words that you were there for them. Another thing that I felt like was particularly helpful, just kind of as a caveat, is using intentional language. And I think, especially with children, and I'm sure you can speak to this too, I think just because of our innate discomfort with death, I think that there's a lot of euphemisms that are used, like passed on, and I think it's really important to use the actual language of death and dying, especially when it comes to kiddos. And it's just because it can be really confusing for them. And I just kind of put that in there, just, as kind of a plug-in for like my little ones and my sister's kids, because I think, we often say, well, I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, but I think kids are a lot more observant and aware than people give them credit for. Yeah, and I think that we're inadvertently, I think we're doing that because we feel uncomfortable, but I think it's helpful to talk about that with them and to use the appropriate words, because it can cause confusion. And when we say passed on or, things like that, I think it really can just kind of cause some inner turmoil. That's, again, my opinion on that. And really, lastly,
it's actually not just your opinion. It's, what the professionals say we should do. And that's another good topic for us to do sometime, is using the word, use the right words.
Yeah.
Body parts and death and everything.
Yeah, because, I think especially with the younger ones, you say passed on. I mean, it could cause confusion. Like, do they think, Nana left them, and, where did she go? Is she not wanting to come back? I mean, I think it's important to use the right terminology, and, it's so important, I think, for children, for us to talk to them about that. And so, that is kind of my plug. And then lastly, something I have found that I never, in my years working in palliative care, I never thought about this before. But for me, it was really important when people, just kind of use the name of the person who died, using the name of my mom or my dad. And, I think people get the sense that we don't want to talk about the person that died when they're grieving. But in a way, especially as time has gone on, I want to know that, they're not forgotten. And I think sharing stories and memories or things that we love about them or reminded them is so helpful. I find myself working my mom or my dad, really more so my mom now. I think it's more recent, into conversations I normally wouldn't have, but I found, like, because I was so desperate to talk about her, and just to know that she's still here. I think it is helpful. And that physician I used to work with, I was newer to that department. And so previously, like whenever I had worked with the hospitalist, my mom had come up there, had, baked cookies for them. So they had all met her, and he didn't meet her. And he had said, I never met her. I wish I would have had the chance to meet her. Can you tell me a story about her? I'd love to hear about her. And that just meant so much to me. And he wanted to see a picture of her. Yeah, he wanted to see a picture of her. And, that really helped me, and that was nice. I felt like that was very genuine, and, it just kind of helps you still feel connected to them. And, that's not always going to be the case, if you lose like a child or, there's always these different situations, but those are just some of the things that I found in my situation that were really, not helpful, and that were helpful in while I was going through this. And so I just wanted to share that, because I feel like people have the best of intentions, but this is just not something most of us go into and feel super comfortable with and be like, yes, I'm in my element. I know exactly what to say.
Right.
Sure.
I think our audience will be better kind of equipped after listening to your examples in terms of choosing something that's good to say. And I would really encourage each of them to give, careful consideration to choosing their words carefully in order to offer comfort and wisdom to people who've had a death within their family. Your thoughts, your words will make a difference, and they're going to be remembered for years to come. And if you say the right words, they will bring comfort for years to come. And if you say the wrong words, somebody's going to have written them down and think about them, and
and talk about them on a podcast later.
Later. Yeah. And say, let me tell you what somebody once said to me. And you do not want to be that example. So, Gina, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to do this. And again, I think this is something that, we all struggle with, but I think, the most important thing is we show up and we're there.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Charlie, have you had someone say something particularly helpful or particularly unhelpful after Michael's death?
I think only one person said something, something unhelpful. Yeah, really, just one person. Everyone else understood that. It sucked.
What was the unhelpful thing they said?
Something about, I shouldn't be alone. I'm coming over. It's like that's not how I'm processing this. And the person was insisted. Then I insisted that she not contact me anymore. Basically, I'll call you. She didn't seem to get that. It was just, everything just sucked. That's the word I have for it. And I felt like shit some days, and other days, I felt, a little less shitful. But it was good. I mean, friends and family let me know they were around if I needed anything, and then left me alone. I embraced solace. I embraced solitude.
Yep.
And I kept thinking about Greta Garbo, keep thinking about her, but I just remembered that she explained that she never wanted to be alone. I did have to explain that to a few people, and then they understood. Just it wasn't about being alone, because she had said she wanted to be let alone, which is very different from being alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been 2 years now. I don't know, and in that time, many times I've just wanted to be let alone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure why. I mean, and lately, to be honest, I don't know. It's just been hurting a lot more lately, the last couple of months. And intellectually, I understand, and we discuss it. I mean, it's part of the grieving process, and it will never
Right.
completely go away, and it'll hit its peaks sometimes, but it still sucks.
And there could be times of the year even that are worse than others. I don't know if you guys did more together in the summer or something that makes it a harder time.
No, not necessarily. I mean, last year, after it was only a year, I felt less, well, yeah, trauma than I had obviously when he first died.
Mm-hmm.
But this year is just, it's almost matching.
Well, we're going to do a show pretty soon about the second year of grieving, because people have a lot of myths that the first year is the worst, but really it's the second year that's the worst. And we'll talk about why that is and some expectations. So maybe that will kind of help with some perspective too.
Yeah, I had to go back and talk to my therapist, and he was basically what you're saying right there about
Mm-hmm.
that yeah. So
yeah, we think, if we get through that first year, everything will be okay. And then the second year comes and it's like, this sucks.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah.
There's a whole different thing, because you realize that there aren't any more new memories that are going to be made, and that, the pictures that you have are all the pictures that you have. And there's just this whole kind of dynamic that happens in that second year.
Yeah. Yep.
But I'm always here to let you be alone.
I like that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what do we have for our third half?
So in our third half, Claire Lucky, who goes under the name Grieving Bitch on Instagram, is part of the Everyone Dies correspondent team. At age 32 and only 5 months after her marriage, her husband was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma, which is brain cancer, in February 2020. And Claire was his caregiver until his death in June of 2021. To begin to cope with this loss and trauma, she channeled her sense of humor and inner bitch by creating the Grieving Bitch account on Instagram. Claire is sharing her grief journey and life challenges as a 34-year-old widow living in New York City with Everyone Dies in her regular bi-monthly third half segment.
Hi, welcome back to Everyone Dies third half, and we are with Claire Lucky, who's known as the Grieving Bitch on Instagram. Welcome back, Claire.
Hi, Marianne. Hi, everybody.
So we've been talking today on the show about what to say and what not to say to people who are grieving. And since you're going through Matt's death, and when he was sick, you must have had experiences with people who either were very helpful or made you enraged. So let's start with, did anybody ever say anything to you that turned out to be like really helpful to you in terms of Matt's death?
I think the actions spoke a lot louder than words. I think sometimes less is more. And I really like the principle of just send food, just send a gift card, just do something that's like slightly personal. A little action, I think, goes a long way. And I think if you take 5 minutes to think about what your relationship is with that person and some of the last exchanges that you've had, and think critically about them and let that dictate what they could need, it might be really helpful. Like, for example, if I was somebody that was like sharing to you that, oh my gosh, I just can't get through, the chores at home, maybe you could offer to send a cleaning lady over to my house once a month, or maybe you could send a gift certificate to go to the spa and get me some time off. So I think that personalization is really helpful. And if it's somebody that's a little bit more ancillary, I think it's okay to just say, I love you and I'm so sorry for your loss. Or even calling it out and saying, there's probably nothing that I can say to make this better, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you.
And then what is your response to that when you hear that? I know there's nothing I can do to make this better. And do you feel like, well, of course there's nothing you can do to make this better, or do you think you're right? Do you take that sort of in the spirit with which it's said, or does it upset you to hear that?
For me, it felt validating and it felt like relief, because what happened to my husband and I at the ages that it did was really insane. So when somebody just simply acknowledged that we went through a crazy circumstance, I found that to be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And
another thing I really
go ahead.
Another thing I really liked was when people asked me about my husband's personality or about his life pre-cancer, because that made me remember the good times.
So did you find it comforting to be able to talk about the quote unquote pre-mat?
It did. And it caught me off guard, because so many people were focused on the death and the cancer and in some ways separating themselves from a tragedy. But I remember one of my coworkers was the first person that said, well, how did you guys meet? And I could barely answer it in the moment, because it was the first time somebody said that to me. But after stumbling my way through it, I was like, wow, I just didn't even think that somebody would do something like that. And now I wait for it. Now I'm just raring for somebody to ask me about Matt's personality and share memories.
Mm-hmm. Because I think sometimes people shy away from that because they don't want to upset the bereaved. They don't want to, they're so worried about making it worse. But I wonder, can they make it worse?
Yeah, they're already dead. I mean, the bad thing happened. So I think, there's nothing they can really say that's going to bring them back or kill them more. So I think holding space is the best move.
Mm-hmm. So the other side of it are the things that people say that you look at them like, did that really just come out of your mouth? So did you have any of those?
Yeah, I do. Oh, I do. So the top of my list is, let me know if there's anything I can do. And that one I heard a lot during his terminal illness. And I heard that a lot after his death. And that just feels like somebody is saying that for them, not necessarily for me, because it's almost as if like they're just giving this blanket statement If there's anything in the world that you need, just, you tell me what it is and I'll do it. And it's like, I don't know if that person's comfortable doing my laundry or doing something that I really need to get done, or like, I just don't know what it is that I can and cannot get out of that person, or how they can be useful, as opposed to the specific request or a specific offer.
So if somebody were to say to you, do you need help with your laundry? Do you think that you would you say yes?
I may.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of people who are very, very sick who won't let anybody do their laundry. So I was curious about, like, how, because, for our listeners, they're wondering, well, how personal can we be? How closely can we offer things?
It's a good question. I think in the beginning of Matt's illness, I wasn't really ready to take help. And I think I felt like ashamed that I couldn't do it all, because I wanted to do it all. I wanted to save Matt's life, and I wanted to have a smile on my face and do it. But towards the end and afterwards, I'm starting to accept that I had to ask for help. And that's the only way I think we get through this world, is with a community. And it takes a village to raise a child and to bring somebody into this world. And I think it takes a village on the way out as well.
Mm-hmm.
To rally around the dying and the ones grieving. So I think in terms of laundry specifically, what would be like the perfect thing to say would be, you know what, I have every other Tuesday free. Drop your laundry outside your front door, and I will take care of it. And then that's an easy win.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's good advice. What else do people say that made your teeth go on edge?
I think I understand what you're going through really set me right off. I think that people that actually understood what I was going through, which would be a widow in their 30s, knew better than to say stuff like that. Because loss is unique, grief is different for everybody, and I have just a visceral reaction to, I understand, I can empathize. I think compassion is a little stronger when you're dealing with the loss of a loved one.
And so what would be in that kind of genre, but different, that would be helpful to hear, do you think?
I can't understand what you're going through, but I love you and I support you.
That's good advice. I hope people are writing that one down. Sometimes I'll say, I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. Do you think that that's helpful?
I like that one.
Do you? Oh, phew.
Yeah. Because they can't, because that goes with the compassion is greater than empathy.
Or did you ever have anybody say to you, this really sucks, this is really awful?
I had a coworker say something like that to me, and I really appreciated him for saying that.
So that's another idea too for people. It's like, there's sort of like, you put lipstick on a pig, but Matt is still dead. So don't try to sugarcoat it. You can just say, this sucks.
Yeah, simple enough.
Right. So what other things? Give me another one.
He would want ... Insert whatever here. He would want you to be a part of this or do this or do that. The reality is he's dead. He doesn't want anything. He's no longer on this earth. it's about me, it's about my healing, and it's about what I want. And I think people may say that, may not really understand that I know what I'm the closest one to Matt, and I know what he would want theoretically. But it is more about the griever. I know what I want. I know what I need. I don't need somebody telling me what they think, because then it's cut with their own viewpoints anyway.
Right. And plus, how well, did they know Matt to, channel his spirit to say this is what Matt would want?
Yeah, unless they're a medium. And even if they're a medium, I'm not necessarily buying it.
I think that's sort of presumptuous to say, well, he would want you to go back to church or X or Y or whatever it is, because, I think that's a pretty huge assumption.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got any more?
Well, I had another one with a specific one with my death anniversary with Matt. I worked up a lot of courage to say to a coworker, I said, listen, I'm taking some bereavement time next week. My husband's 1-year anniversary of his death is coming up. And then he responded with, well, I've got this grief thing going on too. And, we're putting my dog down soon. And I was like, are you serious? Like, it just felt like comparative grief. And this person knew, about the caregiving and everything that went associated with my husband's illness. And I was like, oh my God. So I think that's just a clear example of like, this is my grief, this is my space. And then you added in something that's going on in your life. And it's also, it's not a human loss. So it's a little bit, I felt like it was a little different.
Mm-hmm. So do you think he was trying to empathize with you, or was he totally clueless?
I think he was clueless. I think it was somebody that's never lost anyone nearby. So I think that was like, and he's not a bad person by any means, but it was just one of those moments of you've never lost someone close to you, and it shows.
Yeah, I can see that. How many more are there? What's the next one?
Well, I haven't heard this one a lot, but everything happens for a reason, and it's all part of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people have the nerve to say that to me. And if they did, I'd correct them pretty quickly. But I know that's a big one for other grievers.
Mm-hmm. So that's sort of that faith-based kind of, there's a reason, there's a plan, there's a bigger picture. But when you're in the middle of that grief and loss, even if that was your belief system, that's not what you can see at that moment.
Right. There's a time and a place for statements like that, and death and dying is not usually the same.
I can see that. Did you ever, when somebody said something that really rattled your teeth, did you ever respond to anybody?
I don't have the nerve yet to really correct people.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when I've heard some of the real negative things, it's been a shock, and then I take it away for some time and then create a meme and post it on the internet.
So if you see yourself in a meme and you say, wait a minute, didn't I say that to her? The answer is probably yes.
Yeah, so friends and family, beware. You are my material.
So is that your list? I don't want to miss any of the good ones, but I want to make sure you get them all in.
Well, the big finale. This is really the big finale. I was shocked by this one. This was one of the first ones that I heard. I was having a chat with somebody a couple of months after I came back to work, and I was talking about redecorating my apartment, and she knew my husband was sick, but she didn't know he passed away. And I told her at the end of the conversation, I forgot exactly how I phrased it, but I was like, since my husband died, yada, yada. And she was like, oh, your husband died? No, she was just like a little flustered. And then one of the first things out of her mouth was, well, at least you don't have to worry about his opinion now that you're redecorating. It was just like, I think I'd rather worry. Yeah, I think I'd rather worry about his opinion.
Did she realize what she said after she said it?
No. She continued to talk about her husband and how she has to sneak packages by him. So she just kept putting salt in the wound that she has a husband, she's sneaking packages by, and she happened to be interviewing me for, well, I mean, not like interview is a strong word, but she happened to be talking to me about a role, like her job at the company I work at, and she was seeing if I would be a good fit for it because she was getting a new job somewhere else. So, it was just I didn't want to burn a bridge. I didn't want to yell at her or anything, and I was still in shock. So that was probably the worst one I've heard.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That. Well, that really sucks, and I'm sorry she said that to you.
Thank you, Marianne.
Oh. So for our listeners, kind of think first. Less is more. Actions speak louder than words. And we appreciate you, Claire, for cluing us in on all this stuff.
You got it. I'm your millennial grief correspondent.
Thanks, Claire. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies, and thank you for listening. Like sand through an hourglass, so are the days of our lives. This is Charlie Navarrete, and as Sinatra said, I'm going to live till I die.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, eat dessert first, especially if it's pie. And every day is a gift. Thank you.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.